Ever wonder why, some sequels just don't land? We've all been excited for a follow-up only to walk away disappointed. The 2020s have gifted us with some incredible cinematic experiences, but also a few that fell short of expectations. It's a tough spot to be in, and creating eh,
Creating something that lives up to the legacy of an original, but sometimes the magic just isn't there.
and today we're diving into those sequels that didn't quite hit the mark. Um, and these aren't necessarily the worst movies ever made, but films that simply failed to capture the spirit of what made the originals special. We'll explore what went wrong and why these follow ups left audiences wanting more from the first installment. Let's start with God. The first film was a breath of fresh air in the DC universe, but the sequel struggled to recapture that magic. It relied too heavily on familiar elements and introduced underwhelming villains despite a talented cast. Uh, while Patty Jenkins is uh, a capable director, this one didn't quite connect. Uh, so next up is We Original. It wasn't a critical darling, but it holds a special place in many millennials' hearts. And uh, this sequel had a better lead in LeBron James, but it was bogged down by excessive CGI and a crowded, cameo-filled climax. It felt like a retread of the original, but with less charm. Then we have proceeded to Similar, that makes sense of Articular Pastors. Similar when they wanted to Similar Pastors. Eddie Murphy's comeback film was a triumph, but this sequel didn't recapture that energy. The premise, finding a long lost son, felt forced and detracted from the original's charm. It wasn't a terrible movie, but it lacked the humor and heart of the first. Uh, Shifting gears to horror took a strange turn. The original was a tense, gripping thriller, but the sequel attempted to make the villain a sympathetic character. Uh, it didn't work. The Without the original director and with weak performances, it felt like a misstep. Moving to animation lost some of its sparkle. Um, well, the first two films were solid fun. Uh, you This installment felt rushed and lacked the charm of Adam Sandler's performance. It went straight to streaming and didn't quite capture the magic of its predecessors. The reboot in 2018 was a welcome return to form, but failed to deliver on the promise. It focused on a new character and strayed from the core conflict between Laurie and Michael, leaving many fans disappointed. Uh, the Marvel Cinematic Universe hasn't been immune to sequel struggles. It promised a new adventure, but it was bogged down by a visually cluttered quantum realm and a lackluster villain. Um, it felt like a step back for the franchise, and a 7 years ever Netflix's couldn't recapture the brilliance of the original. The first film was a thought-provoking social commentary, but the sequel felt derivative and lacked the same impact. It didn't resonate with audiences or critics. And finally was a risky venture that didn't pay off. While Joaquin Phoenix's performance was anticipated, in musical direction and unconventional approach failed to capture the darkness and intensity of the original. It was a critical and commercial disappointment. And lastly, we have similar. The first three films were a welcome return to the slasher genre, but the standalone story felt like it was written by AI, lacking the character development and scares of you that made the original so fun. So there you have it. A look at some sequels that didn't quite live up to the hype. And it's a reminder that making a great sequel is a difficult task. And sometimes it's best to leave a good thing alone. But hey, at least it gives us something to talk about, right? Did your favorite sequel make the list? With that said, thanks for watching. And until next time, do for. Thanks for watching.